myself on the spot real quick here. Now, I strive to be an open book as much as I can. I'm a proponent of essentially normalizing conversations about our financial lives. And what I mean by that is, it's no secret that there's always been a cloud of privacy around finances and sort of a stigma around talking openly about it. I mean, unless you're a celebrity or a highly successful person for the most part. So when it comes to income, business bonuses, net worth, family wealth, all that stuff, many believe that secrecy is kind of a contributing factor to why there has been so much financial illiteracy for so long. Like almost like everyone is kind of programmed to keep their financial information from others. Perhaps it's the competitive nature that or individualism that the U.S. Kind of culture has. Who knows? Like for instance, when you're applying for a new job, one might say that a lot of us come to an arbitrary salary based on what we make now and what pay increase would make us happy, as opposed to what that position really should be paying you. So, things like that, non-transparency kind of throw a wrench into the situation. So, with all that said, I got into real estate investing just last year, but I'm actually, going to give you guys the actual numbers that it took me to get this particular deal that you see here, this duplex. It's by no means the only way. It's simply how it just happened to work out for me. And like I said, it's in the spirit of our goal of transparency for anyone who may be a little, apprehensive in terms of getting into owning property, whether as an investor or just, owning a family home. But I want to shine some light on, what it's like. So we'll go ahead and take a look at some of the details and just hop right into it. All right, so here you see, it's the actual aerial photo of the duplex that I have out in the city of Carson.
Sorry, Destiny.
Oh, it's okay. He just wants to see the duplex. It's all good. Um, so here are the details. So it was listed at 799. I ended up getting it for 800. Each unit is 2 bedroom, 1 bath. Each unit's 840 square feet with a 1 car indoor garage. This is the lot size. It was built in 1960. They're separately metered in terms of the utilities for electric and gas, but water is combined. No adjacent walls, and it's actually got a cool little private backyard or front yard, I should say, for the back unit. So as you can see here, we were about a year and a half into the pandemic around July of 2021, when essentially I was able to get the unit at $1,000 above asking price, and there were actually three other competitors' offers. There was one offer at 810,000, so 10,000 above asking price. 820,000 at 20,000 above asking price, and there was an offer even at $235,000 down payment, and there was no way I was putting that kind of down payment. And so it was just one of those things where I was able to think outside the box and basically appeal to the seller and essentially try and make it a win-win situation. So now we're just going to go through the basic process of what acquiring a rental property can look like, and keep in mind it's different for everyone, but this is a real life empirical example, pretty much like at a high level macro view. And if we do have time at the end, I'll go ahead and tell you guys the crazy story of how I actually was able to get it at only $1,000 above asking price, which was totally insane and unheard of in this seller's market. Um, so yeah, so we have here, it literally started off, I met with my real estate agent, and I met a good one who is smart and definitely driven. Driven was probably the most important aspect of it because there's a lot of work that goes behind it. They put me into contact with a good lender because I had a pretty crappy lender the first time around, and they found a better one for me, so that was awesome. And I basically provided my financials to get pre-approved, not pre-qualified. There's a huge difference. Basically, pre-approved literally is a more official. Most places won't even take a pre-qualification. And then essentially at that point, after you're pre-approved, you start looking for the properties. And so now going in as an investor, what you don't see is all that goes on before all of this, essentially. So I did a ton of research, studying and just learning as much as I could about real estate before jumping in. And I'm just skipping it here, obviously, because I want to go right into the good stuff, but just wanted to mention that because it is important, that there's a lot that kind of goes into it ahead of time. So then the next step is once you start looking at properties, you just, you run a quick analysis on those prospective properties that you are looking at. And what I mean by quick analysis is that you do kind of like rules of thumb to make sure that, before you jump into filling out a full-on spreadsheet, you can see if it's even worth your time. And then, yeah, and then, you actually go to those open listings that do meet your search criteria and that actually do work with your numbers that you're running. And, you go in, you look at the overall structure of the property and evaluate, whether you actually even want to put in an offer. And like I said, you kind of have the goggles of an investor at that point. You're looking at it from an investor point of view and what value add you can basically provide. And then, yeah, essentially you start putting in multiple offers and especially, like I said, in the seller's market that we've been in, you just kind of keep throwing them against the wall until one eventually sticks. And so, in my case, I got lucky and I got one. One was accepted. So then I notified my lender and scheduled to have the inspections done. It includes the general inspection, plumbing, termite or wood destroying organisms, as they like to call it. And, you get an appraisal done, just to make sure everything is good to go. And then you basically begin your negotiations on the deal based on any findings that you might find from the inspections, because you might need to have some things replaced, or, if they're not willing to replace it, maybe you'll get a credit, at closing, and they'll actually pay you, what they would have, put in to replace that item, or even a reduction in the actual purchase price. So, essentially, yeah, once all that's done and you actually come to an agreement at the very end, after all the negotiations are done, you have to provide your financials all over again to your lender. Make sure you didn't become broke in the past couple of weeks while you were looking for a place. They want to make sure you're still good. And then after that, you sign on the dotted line, you close escrow, and then the property is yours. So at that point, I began renovations, repairs, and cleaning the units, to essentially get them rent ready, because I knew I was going to, want to start bringing tenants in and all that good stuff to show them the units. And and then basically once the units are rent ready, I'd started holding open houses and bringing people in and scheduling appointments to have them check it out, and more so I could screen those potential tenants while I'm accepting their applications, because you want to kind of put them through a somewhat rigorous inspection process. They're going to be living in your property, so you want to make sure that they're going to treat it right. And so, once they pass your, well, I came up with a 3-level screening process that I like to do. That was actually pretty good. And so, once they pass that, you have them sign off on all the lease docs and the disclosures and everything. They provide their, deposit, the security deposit, and then the first month's rent, and they're pretty much able to move in. So, and at this point, basically this process is specific to self-managing a property. So a lot of people like to hire it out to a property manager. I particularly wanted to manage it myself to kind of like, learn the ropes and learn the ins and out of the business. So in addition to, property acquisitions, I want to do property management at the same time. So yeah, so the process is just a little different. So here at this point, you might think, okay, cool, I got the tenants in. Now I can chill. I can kick my feet up and just watch the checks roll in and start, buying Mercedes and watches and stuff. No, you can't do that. Sorry. You may actually have a couple more things that you want to do first, and take care of. And so, pretty much how the process would really end is that you then, once they move in, you have to respond to tenant repair and maintenance requests that I might have missed when I was going, getting the units rent ready, because most of the repairs and maintenance come within the first year anyways. So a lot of the times they're going to call you or submit a maintenance request a couple times within those first couple months. So that's pretty normal. And then, but at this point, even before I moved them in and everything, I already had my landlord software set up and ready to go. So I was able to efficiently manage them from the get-go, all online, which is good, because that's good for the lease documentation and all these disclosures that you have to give them, and also to accept the rental payments as well too. And they, that's where they also submit maintenance requests and things of that nature. So it just makes it a lot more smooth. And then, yeah, and then you also have to keep your bookkeeping, good to go as well too. So even if you hire out, and decide that, I'm going to have somebody else do my bookkeeping for me, you still need to keep track of that kind of thing. So you want to keep track of all your expenses, your cash flow, and all that good stuff in a separate business account, because you want to keep everything separate. And that's essentially for 2 reasons. Number one, for simplicity, for when you're going to do your taxes and everything, you just want to keep your personal stuff separate from your business stuff. And for also liability reasons. I'm gonna have a whole nother session on, asset protection and liability and all that stuff later on. Once again, that's the nerd side coming out in me. I've bought books on LLCs and, land trusts and things of how to protect your assets. So we'll be able to go into all that kind of fun stuff as well too. But yeah, it's very important, so you want to keep all that stuff separate. And then, yeah, and then me in particular, and what a lot of the professional real estate investors do is they'll schedule and plan to have a handyman come out at least every 6 months to do general inspections of the property, because essentially, you might have a tenant that doesn't call you or submit any requests for years, and that might sound like it's a good thing, like, hey, they're not bugging me, but things do break down. And so it kind of raises the question, okay, well, are things breaking down and they're not telling me, or is there a small issue that's going on that could potentially become a bigger issue because they're not telling you about it? So you got to kind of think about that kind of stuff. So if you do a general inspection every 6 months, you can catch those things and just have the handyman fix it right then and there, and then send you the bill for it. So yeah, like I said, with transparency being one of the main goals, the last thing I ever want to do is sugarcoat a reality that people need to know about. So I feel it's critical to give real life numbers to shed light on pretty much everything that happened, especially with this first deal. So before I get into the numbers and everything, I know I just kind of went through a lot. Did any of that generate any questions for anybody?
Destin, what are your 3-level screenings?
Okay, yes, good question. So first level of screening, it's a very short 5-question questionnaire that is also part of the whole online process that coordinates with the landlord software that I have. So it's 5 basic questions, and it just says, like, what's your credit score, how many people are going to live there, do you have any pets, and there's 2 other questions as well. But it's very basic stuff, and believe me, that really helps filter out the people that are just going to waste your time, because they're very basic questions. So if they're not willing to take 30 seconds to fill out that 5-second questionnaire, then they're I'm not going to curse on this, but they're damn sure not going to, fill out a full application and be, as robust on that as they would on this, very simple questionnaire. So the people that I knew were at least somewhat serious would at least do the questionnaire at the forefront. And that's because also that would let me know, yeah, that they're serious and everything. So it would, essentially bring them to level 2, where I'd say, okay, at least I know you meet the minimum standards to where you're not going to waste my time, and that we can actually have a discussion. So after that, I would, so level 2 would be to actually schedule a showing to have them come out to see the property itself. So when they actually get to the property, I'll ask them a couple more questions, and then, just kind of get like that. It's the second level is more of a vibe kind of thing. And I really wish I would have, trusted my gut on the first tenant that I had, who actually, they had a stellar, background, their credit history and everything was great, but I didn't get a good vibe from them. But I was like, hey, their credit's fine, their background check was fine, so let me, I'll rent it out to them. And they ended up, unfortunately, being a nightmare. And so thankfully they're gone now, and I replaced them with a much better tenant. So so that's level 2. And then level 3 is just the full on, application with full on background check. So, once they pass those 3 levels and they go through that full gamut, then they're pretty much good to go.
Destin, I had one question. This is Robert.
Hey.
Did you have any guide that you followed, or resource for making sure that you complied with, like, housing issue, or to make sure you didn't run into any discrimination or housing issues with selecting tenants, like a resource,
Absolutely. Yeah. So I did 2 things. Number one, I bought a book on property management by Brandon Turner, by the way, Bigger Pockets. And so, yeah. And so that thing was phenomenal in and of itself, because even though a lot of these laws are state specific, a lot of them are also generalized. So, and not, I wouldn't say necessarily common sense, but a lot of the same types of general rules are applicable. They're kind of uniform across all states. But then you did want, I mean, they do basically tell you that, yeah, you'll need to go on the state's website and go through the civil code and make sure, for California, they have to do this. And for California, it's this amount of days to do that. So I literally went through the California civil code anytime they brought it up in the book. I would go on the California Civil Code website and I would print out that civil code. I would go through it with a highlighter, like, okay, cool, that's good. And then I would coordinate and make sure that it matched with what was in the lease agreement, so that everything was matched. And the lease agreement that I had was California specific as well too. So, I knew that was going to be okay, but then I added additional addendums and things like that as well too. But I did my research ahead of time for sure.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. Good question.